Good evening and welcome to Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And welcome to the forum for the second installment in our ongoing series of conversations with some of the leading artists, activists, and thought leaders in the country. My name is Charles Ward, and I'm the Senior Director of Development for YBCA. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Michael D. and the African American Employees Association. We'd also like to acknowledge and thank the following organizations for the promotional support that they provided for this event: Charles Houston Bar Association, Coalition of Black Professional Organizations, Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Green for All, Yale Black Alumni Association, and Demos. As a 21st century cultural institution, we understand our power and indeed our responsibility to reflect social values and ideas within our community through the exhibits, performances, and films we present. This series is an adjunct to our core programming and is meant to engage new audiences in a new way. We hope that those of you who may just be getting to know us through this series will be inspired to begin sampling our other offerings and include YBCA in your list of cultural options. We're a well-known and highly regarded arts presenter throughout the contemporary art world, primarily due to the work and vision of our talented curatorial team. And we're proud of that, but we'd rather be better known by you. To that end, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the individuals who are most responsible for the art in our galleries, screening room, on our stages, and the public programs that are meant to contextualize the art that we present. Betty Sue Hertz is YBCA's Director of Visual Arts. She oversees all artistic, financial, and operational functions for the Visual Arts Department and is responsible for the work that's presented in our galleries. Before coming to YBCA in 2008, she was the curator of contemporary art at the San Diego Museum of Art. She brings more than 30 years' experience as a curator, writer, and teacher to her current position and has built a growing following of visual art enthusiasts since she's been in San Francisco. Joel Shepard. Joel is YBCA's film and video curator. He curates and coordinates all of the department's 150-plus screenings per year. He was previously Associate Director of the San Francisco Cinematheque. He's been named Best Local Film Programmer multiple times by multiple publications. As do all of our curator, Joel travels the world in search of rising yet undiscovered filmmakers who are doing extraordinary work and are deserving of wider recognition. YBCA recently held a groundbreaking first ever in the U.S. Filipino Film Festival, curated solely by Joel after multiple trips to the Philippines. Joelle Tan is Director of Community Engagement. Joelle supervises a team that develops, implements, and evaluates audience building, community partnerships, public events, and educational programs for youth and adults. Isabel Irigoyen. In addition to her role in overseeing the community rentals program, she serves on the curatorial team as the principal curator for YBCA's music presentations. Isabel has just returned from a research and networking trip to the Fez Festival of World Sacred Music in Morocco. Mark Bamuthi Joseph. Mark is the newest member of YBCA's curatorial team. He is YBCA's performing arts curator. He's responsible for the artistic, financial, and operational functions of the performance program that we present. Mark is considered by many in the field as one of America's vital voices in performance, arts education, and artistic curation. He was recently named as an inaugural recipient of the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation Artist Award. He is a past recipient of the Alpert Award in the Arts for Theater. He has graced the cover of Smithsonian Magazine after being named one of America's top young innovators. He was also the artistic director of the 7-part HBO documentary Russell Simmons Presents Brave New Voices, and an inaugural recipient of the United States Artist Rockefeller Fellowship, which annually recognizes 50 of the country's greatest living artists. Most recently, he served as the Master of Ceremonies for the What's Going On Now 40th anniversary celebration of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On performance at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. An event featuring John Legend and the National Symphony Orchestra. And he is notably the former artistic director of the Bay Area's own Youth Speaks, a nonprofit organization that helps youth find, develop, publicly present, and apply their voices as leaders for social change. This is the YBCA curatorial team. We hope that you will get to know them through the art that you experience here in our galleries, in our screening room, and on our stages. YBCA is a nonprofit organization that's supported through grants from private and corporate foundations as well as individuals like you. We also derive some of our individual support through memberships. You should have found a membership brochure on your seat. Rather than leave it there, I encourage you to take it with you and consider becoming a member. We are a wonderland of activity, and we occupy a very special place on the arts landscape in the Bay Area. Our moderator tonight is once again Farai Chideya. She's an author, journalist, professor, blogger, and in this presidential election season, pundit on all things political. She also hosts a similar conversations program for public radio station WNYC in New York City. Please welcome Farai Chideya. Van Jones has been described as an American treasure. He's the founder of 3 thriving nonprofit social action organizations: the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Color of Change, and Green for All. He served in the Obama administration as Green Jobs Advisor to the President. He is the author of 2 best-selling books, The Green Collar Economy and his most recent, Rebuild the Dream, a title taken from the name of the most recent nonprofit organization he's founded. Before he comes out, I'd like to let you know that his books are for sale on site tonight and that he'll be doing a book signing immediately after the conversation ends, in the back of the room there. Please welcome Van Jones.
Good to see you, Van.
Oh, it's good to be seen.
So the last time I saw you, we were both booked on different shows at MSNBC, and we did one of those running hellos.
That's true.
You were on Up with Chris. I was on Melissa Harris Perry. And for many years before that, we would talk when we were both in the Bay Area, and you were working with Ella Baker. There's been so many steps between your work here in the Bay and your work on the national stage. And I want to unpack those. But before I do, I want to talk about something more recent, which was this conference, which was, about taking back the American dream. And you were on this kickoff plenary session that was called, if I recall correctly, Winning in November so we can win in December and beyond.
Yeah.
And so that raises a few questions for me, but I'll just throw out two. One, who is we? Mm-hmm. And two is, what does winning in December and beyond mean?
Well, first of all, it's just good to be back in the Bay. So I'm just glad to be home. And, you know, this is where I cut my teeth. I came out here in 1992 as a student for Yale Law School. Had little dreadlocks, bad attitude, and Eva Jefferson Patterson took me in. Give her a round of applause, one of the great heroes. And, you know, I kind of got exposed to a lot of stuff. Having grown up in the rural South, I had never been to Berkeley and all that kind of stuff. And that was when the Rodney King verdicts came out. I was out here spring 1992, and the Rodney King verdicts came out. And Eva sent me down to observe the peaceful protests that we were having in San Francisco the week after LA blew up. And the SFPD overreacted, arrested everybody, including me. And I found myself in a holding pen for about 12 hours with all of these radicals. And when I got out of jail, called my mom, quite proud of myself. Said, yeah, you know, they had me in jail and whatnot, you know. And that really kind of changed my life, because that was when I really just gave up on the system. You know, I really felt like, here I am, you know, renegade nerd in Yale Law, observing a peaceful protest after this horrible miscarriage of justice in LA and everything, and I wound up in jail. So it's just good to be back, because 20 years later, this is where the journey started for me. And to go from running around with the activist radical crowd in Oakland and Berkeley to being in the White House, teaching at Princeton, back here, it's just important to be able to come home and talk. They should have never let me in the White House. Because I took notes, and I learned some things. And I just, hey, look. People say, you were in the White House, and then they threw you out. It was terrible what they did to you, you know. And they'll get upset, you know. And first of all, it's, you know, re-traumatizing to me. You know, I don't want to relive all that stuff. But this is a constant thing. They say, you know, it's awful. I mean, wherever I go at airports, malls, public restrooms. And people want to come and kind of shed these tears with me about how bad it was and that kind of thing. And I have to remind them, I say, listen, hold on a second now. I was in the White House for 6 months, which is 6 months longer than you. So let's not cry too hard about it. I never expected to go there. But I'll tell you what, you asked me why I talk about December. When Obama wins, and it's going to be a war, but we're going to win it, immediately we're going to be in an even bigger battle. See, this is the thing. See, I learned some things. See, you go right from that election into a lame duck session for Congress. And what gets taken up in the lame duck in December? The Bush tax cuts expire, so they will either continue to let the super wealthy get away with not paying America back, or we're going to fix that. The Pell Grant money runs out, so either the low-income kids will get a chance to go to college, or they won't. Every can that's been kicked down the road For the past 2 years, while this Tea Party compromised Congress has done nothing, every can that's been kicked down the road comes due after the election. Well, after the election has a name, December. See, I learned something. And it's in December that the major issues are going to be resolved. And so we have to be twice as committed. People are like, they want to do less than they did in 2008, which we can talk about later. But if you're rational about it, if we didn't have enough to make change or all the change we wanted in 2008, when we had 60 votes in the Senate, Pelosi running the House, best speaker ever, and Obama in the White House, if that wasn't enough, okay, because it turns out that's just 1/3 of what you need. You also need a media operation like they have with Fox, and you also need a movement in the streets like they had with the Tea Party. It turns out all that we had in 2008 was only 1/3 of what we needed. Now we're going into a situation where you have another election. On the back end of it, the most important decisions for the economy, probably the next 10 years, are going to be made. We should be working 2 or 3 times harder, not 1/3 or 1/8 or 100th, which is what we're doing. So we did a conference in New York, in D.C., and it was a good conference, but I'm concerned, and I'm glad to talk with you. After all we've been through, now we say, who's we? You know, if my dad was still alive, he would spank our butts. I mean, we need to look at ourselves here for a second. You got people now who are like, well, you know, we voted for Obama, and we didn't get the change that we wanted, and I'm just so disgusted, I just give up. Have you heard this? Has anybody heard this? This is not just me, is it? I'm just disgusted with the whole thing. I'm just not going to do anything again. I'm just wounded. I mean, my father died in 2008, right before Obama was born. And that's terrible. If he were here, he would be in prison because he would just have his belt out just going through the mall, just like Jesus in the temple. Just, what the? Every barbershop, just, because look at his generation. They put dogs on them for change. They put fire hoses on them fighting for change. They got beaten fighting for change. People went to jail. People got killed, murdered, put in the ground fighting for change. This generation, we will quit over a really mean tweet. I just can't take no more. And so I think it's important that we understand that 2008 wasn't a finish line, it was a starting line of a new chapter. The hard work was done by our parents and our grandparents to make it possible to have a black president. This stuff we're talking about, that we're about to lie down for, this is the easy part. We should be, you know, you're talking about we're not going to work hard to re-elect a black president after 400 years of nonsense to get a black president. And then we're going to hold him to a standard higher. I mean, this brother, they say he doesn't, well, they say he doesn't believe in the private sector. Well, this brother created 4.2 million private sector jobs in the worst economy since the Great Depression. That's more jobs than Bush created in 8 years with a good economy. What do you want from the brother? What do you want from him?
Well, let me just jump in here. I think that, you know, obviously I covered the 2008 election, and I'm in different ways covering 2012. But when I look at the former Obama fanatics who have become somewhat disenchanted, there are different groups. So there is an ongoing debate about the use of drone strikes and the killing of American citizens who are considered terrorists on foreign soil. So there's a whole question of civil liberties domestic and international. There are questions about whether or not there should have been a greater push for initial job creation while there was a stronger Democratic advantage in Congress, particularly among African Americans who've disproportionately suffered in this labor market. You know, there's different constituencies who have what I would say are well-reasoned. There are the people who are sort of, as you mentioned, on the fainting couch, you know, but then there are people who have well-reasoned arguments for seeing things in this presidency they find unappealing. What do you say to them?
I think that they are right. I mean, here's the thing. Like I said, they should never let me in there because I learned some stuff. Listen, I'm a liberal. I'm a progressive. I can't bite my tongue about kill list. Is that what they call it? That's not in the Constitution. I don't care who the president is. You can't go and kill people in 120 different countries with no oversight, no approval from Congress. That's just wrong. The stimulus should have been bigger. We should have passed cap and trade. I can give you, I mean, if anybody might have reason to be disappointed in the Obama administration, I might qualify. I mean, but I'm not a fool.
You lost a public sector job.
Exactly. Speaking of public sector jobs. So, I mean, if anybody might qualify to have some small sense of disappointment, I think I might qualify. But I'm not a fool.
Thank you.
Everything we don't like about what this president is doing, his opponent has promised to do more and worse. So we have to be as intelligent and as sophisticated as the system that we're trying to change. How do we get change in America? Look at the last time you had a president that you could at least look back on in terms of domestic policy and really get excited about. You got to go all the way back to LBJ. Leave the war out of it for a second, just domestic policy. So you can't even like him 100%. But, you know what, he did the anti-poverty bills. He did the civil rights bills. Did he do that because he was a great president? Did he do that because he wanted to? No. You had a president who was willing to be moved, but you had to have a movement willing to do the moving. If you hadn't had people in Selma getting their heads cracked open and forcing the issue, there would have been no civil rights bill. If you hadn't had the movement doing the moving, here's our problem. It's a very simple problem. In order to make change in America, you have to have two things, not just one. You have to have a president willing to be moved. He's going to be pushed around by a lot of forces, but he's got to at least be willing to listen to you and be moved. And you have to have a movement willing to do the moving. Case in point, George W. Bush. When he was president, y'all had the best, most beautiful movement for peace ever in the history of the country. You don't remember this because you're Americans, you have short-term memory loss. But in the build-up to 2003, you put millions of people in the street, in this city and across the country, millions of people. You put more people in the streets, and those of you who didn't march, you were still answering public opinion polls saying, this is wrong. There were more people in the streets in 6 weeks to stop the invasion of Iraq than in 6 years of the Vietnam War protests. You had a beautiful, powerful movement. It was online, it was offline, it was incredibly sophisticated, and you had a president who, if you had been 200 times stronger, wouldn't listen to you. You had the right movement, you had the wrong president. Then you replace that president with Obama, arguably the right president. But who was in the streets? Was it you? Here you are in the worst economic catastrophe since the Great Depression, and arguably worse for the African American community when you look at wealth loss. Where was the protest? Where was the rally? Who was in the streets? The Tea Party. So you had arguably the right president, you had the wrong movement.
Let me jump in here for a second.
But just to close it up. Mm-hmm. If you want to learn the lesson of 2008 and 2010, the strategy should be to re-elect the president and to re-energize the movement. We've not had both at the same time effectively. And so I have plenty of things I can say about what the president hasn't done. But it was never supposed to be, yes, he can. It was supposed to be, yes, we can. And we haven't done right yet. So I can criticize him, and happy to do so, got a whole book about it. But I also want to criticize us, because this is a serious moment now for the country. And I think if we stay on the fainting couch, and we all have our pain points that we can point to, I just think that we can't answer the critique from our grandparents. That's my point. And we can't answer the critique from our grandchildren.
Well, you lead me to exactly where I was going with this, to the we. So in your book, you talk about moving the tightrope, you know, which is, you know, this idea of mass movements. You know, the Tea Party moves the tightrope one way, and, you know, Occupy moves it another way. But just last semester, I was at Harvard's Institute of Politics, and among the many wonderful speakers we had come was Theda Skocpol, who's a professor there, and she wrote a book on the Tea Party, and we kind of compared notes because I, in 2010, went out and interviewed both Tea Party members, particularly members of the Colorado River Tea Party in Yuma, Arizona, and also Alan West, who is now one of the black Republicans in Congress, and he's been supported heavily by the Tea Party. Fascinating man. We'll just leave it there for now. But Theda Skocpol, Professor Skocpol, made a very distinct point in talking about how the Tea Party operated. She said, the Tea Party has decentralized units, some very micro-local, some regional. They meet on a regular basis, somewhere between weekly and monthly. They will run candidates in primary elections, but their major force is the threat of a primary run.
Yes.
Because entrenched, you know, you look at the percentage of congresspeople who get reelected, you know, the power of incumbency. And people don't really, a lot of people don't bank on there actually being a real primary fight. They're kind of like, well, yeah, you know, it's like this is a primarily Republican district or a primarily Democratic district, and, you know, I've got this huge war chest and whatever, and they don't count on a strong primary fight. So the Tea Party strategy has been, in many cases, to say we will bring it in the primary, and we will either take you down or you will move far enough to the right to make us happy. Now, contrast that with Occupy, which has made a great point and show of not having that kind of tactical organization. So when you talk about moving the tightrope, how do you view Occupy and popular social movements coming from the left and the resistance that I perceive, or at least has been charted, to forming a strategy that deals directly with power?
Well, you know, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think, like most people, I have a mixed view of Occupy. I think probably most liberals, progressives, independent are somewhere between Obama and Occupy right now. Like Obama, maybe not as in love with him as we used to be, but you like him and you want him to be reelected. But you know that just reelecting him will not be enough. So you got to reelect him, but you think, well, what else can we do? Because that may not, you know, fix the problem. And you probably like Occupy, but you're not trying to go outside and get pepper sprayed. So you're like, okay. So I'm somewhere between Obama and Occupy, right? And I think that's really where a lot of us are now. I think we have to talk about Occupy very carefully. And we have to give them their due respect. First of all, they remind me of the young people who created SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who, if you remember, if you follow the analogy, they occupied the lunch counters, right? Then they occupied the segregated buses, the freedom rides. And by taking direct action, they didn't have a lobbyist, they didn't have any pollsters, they didn't have anybody running for office, they may not have had a bill in their back pocket to fix, they may have had a constitutional argument, but they knew something was wrong, and they stood up against it. And by doing so, they really changed the national conversation. But something interesting happened with that group of young people. There was an older woman who was there, who was able to intervene. Her name was Ella Jo Baker, And a moment came when they were about to split. And what they were about to split over was, some of them said, we don't believe in the system. We just want to keep doing direct action. And some of the young people said, well, we want to register voters. We think that will change the system better. And they were fighting and fighting and fighting, and they were about to split. And Ella Jo Baker had enough standing with both sides. And in her quiet way, she kept them together. Now, immediately what happens, we all know the story. By staying together, it turns out trying to register voters is direct action, right? It turned out that they needed each other. But if you had only had the freedom rides without freedom summer, in other words, if those young occupiers in the 1960s hadn't occupied the lunch counters, occupied the buses, and then helped those poor Mississippians occupy the ballot booths, right? If you'd had freedom rides but no freedom summer, you wouldn't have had freedom. Okay? So here is if there's a failure or a breakdown, it's that it's the whole progressive movement's responsibility to figure out this relationship between direct action and smart voting. And if the vote-only side failed to produce the proper direct action response, and the direct action side failed to produce the proper voting response, then everybody's got to sit down at the table. We all have to be humble and say, listen, how can we be as wise as our parents were? We got enemies of our cause who are going back to the old strategy of pushing us out of the ballot booth. We can't ignore that. Our opponents have a strategy. Big corporate cash in, little people out of the electoral process. Citizens United, bring in the big corporate cash, and then what do? They go into every state legislature, and they pass little laws to make it harder for people to vote. Students now, your student ID card in a lot of these states now is not good enough. You have to somehow go and get a government-issued ID from that state. All these little trickery laws. Well, hold on a second now. Isn't that the 1% doing wrong? If they're doing wrong on Wall Street, we're going to protest? But if they do wrong in 50 states and make sure that poor folk and black folk and brown folk and elderly folk and students can't vote, we do nothing? But that conversation couldn't happen because there's nobody who had the respect of all sides. And so we have to look inside our own movements and try to figure out how have we gotten so divided. The Republican Party didn't come over, or Karl Rove didn't come over and engineer that split. That's something missing in our own ability to hold each other. And one thing I've seen about the left, we have the same choice to make that the country has to make. Y'all may not know, I'm a progressive. Y'all may not be. But life on the left, things get tough. Are we going to turn to each other or on each other? See, that's the question for progressives, the question for African Americans, the question for America as a whole. Things are tough. We're going to turn to each other or on each other. And it's very easy for us to go through these manias. Obama is the savior. Obama is great. Obama ain't nothing. Obama just sucks. Oh, here come Occupy. Occupy. Oh, well, Occupy. And we go through these manias where we expect one person or one force or one faction to fix it all. Then we spend our time critiquing what they didn't do, but we miss what us in the peanut gallery munching the popcorn, yelling at the screen didn't do. This is not a movie. It's a movement. But we've been acting like it's a movie.
So, Van, you have been busy.
Yes.
Rebuild the Dream, organization, book. There's some of you who will have a flyer on your chairs that has a little bit more information about what Van's been doing and includes something that you call a head-heart matrix.
It's brilliant.
Of course.
It's genius.
So what is it? What is it?
Look, as I told you, I was in the White House for 6 months, and then I left. I was toe up. I'm going to be honest with Moody. That was tough, by the way.
We're going to get
We'll get
more
there.
to that.
But I believe Belby Brooks. Is Belby Brooks here? Where's Belby? Belby, stand. Give Belby Brooks a round of applause. We got one of the great, stand up. We got one of the great leaders of our cause. Belby Brooks, my mentor. Her daughter used to teach at Princeton. Now she's Sediti. Now she's at Cornell. But she reached out to me when I left the White House and gave me a chance to go teach at Princeton for a year. So I was teaching at Princeton last year. I had this horrible experience of watching all the stuff that we had been building up just get destroyed. When I say we now, I just mean from when Bush got in there and started acting terrible. We built up this movement. And people forgot, Obama's great, but Obama didn't create the movement for hope and change. He did a lot of great things, but he didn't do that. You did that. Ordinary people did that. We built a movement for hope and change. As soon as Bush started that war, we said, oh, no, this is crazy. And then you went from 2003 with the invasion of Iraq, 2004, people came out of their houses trying to stop Bush. People can't remember who ran against Bush. It was John Kerry. Starting to Google, yeah, who did run against Bush? I know I voted for him. That's all I know. Why? Because you're building a movement. You're building a pro-democracy movement. You didn't care who the candidate was in 2004. You knew who he was running against was going to be terrible. Now, suddenly, you got to be perfect. See what I'm saying? In 2004, you didn't have a perfect candidate. You weren't inspired. You weren't rolling on the floor crying. But you were writing checks, knocking on doors. See what I'm saying? How we are? Now, with this brother, he's got to be up here to just get basic support. But anyway, my point is, 2003, Iraq got people moving. 2004, people tried to do something about what was happening. 2005, Katrina. And you saw an American city drown. And African-American mothers and grandmothers on rooftops holding babies and American flags for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, 6 days, 7 days in the richest country in the history of the world. And we got troops overseas doing nation building and the nation destroying everything they want you overseas, and we can't get a drop of water on the tongue of a black infant in the Superdome, and everybody said this is enough is enough. You had never heard of Barack Obama. You said this has got to stop. 2006, you had Karl Rove said 2004, the Republican Party was going to run the government for 30 to 40 years. They're the new majority party. You held them to 24 months. In 2006, you put Nancy Pelosi in the chair and said, what? You never heard of Barack Obama. Maybe, y'all thought he was cute or whatever from the speech, but you weren't sitting around talking about Barack Obama. You were talking about what are we going to do for our country? What are we going to do for our children? 2006. Then by 2007, you had mainstream peace concerns. 2003, you couldn't go home. Black folk could, but most white folk couldn't go home talking about no peace stuff. 2003. By 2007, you had mainstream peace concerns. You would mainstream climate concerns. You would mainstream Guantanamo civil liberties concerns. You did that. Obama didn't do that. You did that. And you created a pathway for Obama to run, you see. So you created the movement for hope and change. Then 2008, you, on the back of a movement, he didn't even understand what the movement was because he didn't ask Will I Am to do nothing. People would come, Tina Fey coming off the top rope. He didn't even know what was happening. You remember Tina Fey? She just eviscerated Sarah Palin. You can't even talk about Sarah Palin. You see Sarah Palin, you think SNL, Saturday Night Live. You ain't never gonna be president. Obama didn't do that. That wasn't Obama. That was we the people. That was artists. That was a movement, not a man. The man met the movement, met the moment, and the magic happened. But we were the authors of that, we the people. And now here I am sitting at Princeton watching all that just get knocked down. And I said, my Lord, what? After 40 years in the wilderness, from 68 when they killed King to 2008 when Obama was inaugurated, we spent 40 years in the wilderness building up a democratic capacity and have it knocked down by some Tea Party people who can't even spell on their signs? Something wrong. Something wrong. So I said, I must write a book. Right? So, what I came to is to try to keep it simple, is that politics is not just about smart ideas. Obama's a genius. A genius is genius. He's got the best ideas in the world. But it wasn't his brain that was moving people. It was his heart. It was his soul. And somehow when we got to Washington, D.C., we forgot about the hope and change. It just became change, change, change. And nobody was managing the hope part. And so I created that grid just to kind of point this out, that politics is the inside game and the outside game. It's the head space and the heart space. And if you want to make real change, you've got to be serious about building a movement that can have the best ideas, but also keep moving people at the heart level. You sit up here talking about public options and individual mandates and that kind of stuff. Pookie don't know what you're talking about. That's not moving Pookie. Right? What if we had had a heart-head rhythm going? You know, first line, it's easy for me to say this stuff because this was not my job in the White House. So, but I thought about it at Princeton. I said, what if the first line in the health care bill had just been, every child in America, before they go to kindergarten, if they have a cavity, we will fill it. Period. Right? Just simple. Right? And then let the Republicans be the pro-cavity party. Right? The Mr. Yuck party. Mr. Yuck Mouth. Republicans. Don't want your child. Right? There was a way that we just it became so intellectual and so much about the subcommittee of the subcommittee and then who's going to get this deal and that stuff. And then we all got transfixed by the sausage making in D.C. and forgot about the movement making at the community level to keep it real. And so the thing is about that. But I do want to say this, because last time I was on stage, I was with Bamudi, and I do want to give credit to the artists. This is so important. When Obama was his most powerful, he was never speaking as a quote-unquote politician or a quote-unquote policy expert or a quote-unquote constitutional scholar. If you go back and look at all those speeches from 2008, that stuff was in there. Because, I mean, the brother's bad. That stuff was in there. You can't remember none of it. You just I don't know what he's saying, but I feel inspired.
Have you been observing my mother?
She's my best friend. Right? Why? Because when he got finished with all that healthcare policy, whatever he was talking about, he then spoke from here. And he stood up there and he was the best slam poet in America. He was the best slam poet. He was able to play the role almost of a shaman. There was a need for a spiritual revival in America, a cultural renewal in America, not just political and economic change, but a deeper yearning. And he was able to pull that out and evoke that in people and have us then feeling connected to each other. It used to be if you were an American, you didn't have no Muslim name and dark skin and immigrant. That was a whole, just that word, those 3 syllables meant something, this. And just by him standing up for 14 minutes and telling his story the way he did in 2004, 17 minutes. He stood there in 2004, told his story, but he made it a new American story. Because I'm the kid of an immigrant, because I'm skinny with big ears, because I'm a little bit strange, right? Just like you. that makes my story an American story. And he turned, all of a sudden you have black folk with American flags going. That's some wizardry. Am I wrong? People got mad at the First Lady. Oh, she shouldn't have said that. But you said it. She said, they misquoted, she said, for the first time, I'm truly proud, or whatever she said. And people got mad, beat her up. But she wasn't the only one that had a light bulb moment and said, maybe I can belong here too. Maybe I can be a part of my own country. Maybe when they say American, they can mean me. Maybe we can kind of remix this thing and come up with something better. That was amazing.
So you credit the arts.
It was him as an artist, not him as a policy wonk. And then what that brought out, because I mean, if you listen to what he's saying, it kind of is poetical. I mean, if you take it literally, it doesn't make sense. But the poetry of it, and then that set a resonance, and then look at all these other artists that came out. Shep Ferry jumps out with the poster. will.i.am jumps out with the video. Obama girl jumped out with the booty shaking. I mean, all these people just coming. Right?
Don't forget the local group called Welders for Obama, who, when I was host of News and Notes, sent me an enormous, like, welded Obama necklace that they wanted me to display. It was like the size of, plate glass window. That's the Bay Area for you.
But people would get it. All
creative.
I'm saying is because we're here and this is about art and art space, the very fact that we've let this separation happen between the cultural change and the political change, which had collapsed totally during the campaign. The reason the campaign felt so good was because those distinctions had collapsed. And you just felt you were riding a wave of change and a wave of hope. Well, when you then get to the inauguration, day before the inauguration, Michael Bearden, who had been Michael Jackson's musical director, put together that concert. You remember, right before the inauguration, they had everybody. They had Stevie Wonder, they had Beyonce, U2, everybody was there. And I mean, and I was there, and I was, like, really, from me to you with the mustache, from the stage. And the president and his family were right over there. And that, to me, when all the artists, Pete Seeger, everybody came out to celebrate what America had achieved, that was the most mind-blowing, transformational thing I've ever experienced. Much more so than the inauguration, which was frankly just very cold. But we forgot, and you never saw that again. Here we are fighting for health care, trying to get doctors to babies. Where was the big concert and Beyonce coming out with the sick, bald-headed baby and saying, what we gonna do? You know? It would have been over. I'm voting for it. Whatever's in that bill, I'm voting for it. We didn't use what we had. We're soulful people. We're artistic people. I don't just mean black folk. I just mean people, all these, what do you call it, bleeding heart liberal folk. It's because you're sensitive. It's because you care about people. But we get scared and we run up into our head and try to sound smart so we don't cry. That's you. People say some old crazy stuff, and you start trying to sound intelligent so you don't hit somebody or cry. See? But that's what art is for. That's what art is for, to mediate that. So anyway, let me say one last thing about that concert, because I never talk about it in public. Look, big concert 2 days before the president is going to get sworn in. Obama's sitting right there. The girls are sitting right beside him, and soon-to-be First Lady is sitting right next to her. Stevie Wonder comes out. Now, the president is a fool for Stevie Wonder. And they had all these big cameras that had been on him, but when Stevie came out, the whole crowd went so crazy, they pulled the cameras off the president over to float over to Stevie Wonder. President-elect looks up and realizes for the first time there's no cameras on him. swear to God, he looks at Michelle, looks at the girls, and jumps up and starts doing the bump with his daughter. Swear to God, swear to God.
But do you have footage?
Nobody has footage because all the cameras have gone to Stevie Wonder. And so then they start, if you look at the HBO thing, they try to swing back around to get him, and he's like, I'm telling you, to me, that was they could have rolled the credits then for me. I was like, go on to the next movie because this one is a wrap. The president up here bumping with his daughter to Stevie Wonder. We done, you know. So you got to remember those days, though. Now listen. I say all that just to remind you. We have to make a choice. Is that going to be the great exception in the life of our children? Or is that the great example of who we can be as Americans? And what it can feel like every day. None of the people who were out there on the mall left America. We're all still here. No, most of those people didn't join the Tea Party or move to Canada or go to Mars. All that beauty, all that creativity is still here, but we have to learn how to use it. And not just wait for Obama to give a good speech or something like that. We forgot our own history. People say, well, these young people don't understand history. They need to study the 60s. No, you need to study last year and the year before, because we've forgotten the last decade, let alone the last century. It's the last decade of struggle, popular creative struggle with the internet and blogosphere. We didn't have a blogosphere. We created that. So I just say all that to say, I fundamentally believe that the country that you saw in 2008 is America. What you saw in 2010 is what America used to be. 2010, they didn't turn out any more people than they turned out in 2008. We didn't turn out. They did exactly what they did in 2008, what they did in 2010. We stood up and made history in 2008, and then we sat down and made history the other direction in 2010. So we have to make a decision. We're going to make history whatever we do. We just have to make a decision what kind of history we want to make.
Well, I'm going to get ready to go to some questions, but before we do, I wanted to get a childhood memory from you, and I don't know what exactly it'll be, but I remember talking to Donna Brazile once, who of course made history as the first black woman to run, to supervise a presidential campaign.
2004.
Yep. And she said that the first time as a child that she knew she could influence people was when she was in Kenner, Louisiana, and, her family was involved in local politics, trying to get people motivated, and so she decided to get on her bike at the age of 7 and ride around handing out campaign literature. And she realized that even though she was still a little kid, she could do something and she had a role. What was a moment for you when you were young that made you realize that you could do something too?
Honestly, I probably didn't have that moment when I was young. Honestly. Well, first of all, I grew up in the rural South. I grew up on the edge of a small town. My dad had grown up in poverty, and he, in segregation in Memphis, and he joined the military, put himself through college, put his brother through college, put his cousin through college, put me through college, my sister through college. My dad, I knew something was possible because of what he was doing. Mm-hmm. But I had a twin sister who was just an extraordinary force of nature. She was taller than me. She was popular. She was good in school. And I was just an extremely shy nerd, comic books, trying to avoid the bullies kid. And she was the sun and the moon in that house. I didn't really understand sexism until we got to a certain age, and all of a sudden she's getting all the kind of negative and positive that you don't want attention, and all this conflict in the household, and all this. There's a lot of stuff that started going on because she's 6 feet tall. She was that tall when she was 12.
Wow.
So here come all these college boys. I mean, just crazy stuff started going on. So I almost was like a walk-on character in my house. Because it was an Angela Jones show from the door. She's still extraordinary. She's a social worker in my home county. But it wasn't until I left, and I was a student at Yale Law School, and even when I was in college, the woman... Oh, that's good.
That was the cue to go to questions. So,
okay.
So we had started this process early,
good.
but finish your story. So you
sure.
went off to Yale.
Even when I was in college, my girlfriend was the president of the Black Student Alliance at Vanderbilt. I was at University of Tennessee, and she was sort of the outspoken person. I was kind of backing her up. So I never really had any reason to think anything about myself till I got to Yale. I got to law school, and all of a sudden we got this racist hate mail. In the law school, basically some N-word go home kind of hate mail in Yale Law School. And the African American students were almost like ashamed. It's like they noticed that we're black, kind of thing. Now I grew up in the rural South, so I didn't have to read the memo that I was black. This had been pointed out to me earlier. But you had all these Ivy League, black kids who had gone to Andover and Yale and Oxford type of stuff and Brown, these schools I'd never heard of, and they did not know what to do. And I said, so the black student was meeting and these Negro children are crying, and I said, well, they ain't shot nobody. I mean, I had a different point of reference. And I said, no, we need to have a strike. I said, we need to, close the school down. And they all like, what? Yeah. I said, no, we need to, this is not acceptable. I mean, we're not up here trying to be called no niggas. I mean, my daddy paid a lot of money for me to come here. I'm not. So we need to have a strike and shut the school down. And insist that the rest of the campus deal with this. It's not our job to deal with this. The campus got to deal with this. And I don't know, all of a sudden, just something started happening. And I was like the room slowed down. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I felt like I had discovered something. And I remember what I said. I said, because this child had gone to Brown, started crying, said, they don't want us here, they don't want us here. And I said, our parents fought too hard to get us here for us to be worried about what they say, but I'm going to tell you this. And all of a sudden I said, we need to shut this school down to open it up. And they started clapping. And I was like, hey. This could translate into dates.
And now we know. Well, I think folks need to, there's a microphone there. I think there's if anyone has any questions, and I'm sure you do, for Van Jones. Oh, there's someone right there who has a question. Oh. Well, you go ahead and then.
I will.
Go.
Thank you, Van.
Oh, hey, brother. Good.
Like your speculation, we're 4 months out from the election. We're 2 out from the conventions. We have 2 months of dead time, power through the next 2 months of the election. I'd love your speculation, continuing down the art theme, of what art and heart tactics are important to prepare for in these dead time 2 months to make a difference in the following 2 months.
Well, I leave that to people who have a little bit more artistic skill than I do. I think we've got to push every time people push this president, at first people say, quit pushing the president from the left. Quit pushing him. You got a hard day already. Here you come. Oh, lefty, right? But every time we push him and he responds, he's a stronger candidate. The young DREAM Act students pushed him. And they even, quote unquote, outed themselves. They said, I'm undocumented, but I'm unafraid. Maybe I'm going to be sent away from my home to some country I don't know, but you need to understand, Mr. President, you need to understand America, that I'm here, and I count, and I want to stay. And it made him a better president because he stepped out and he did the right thing. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender movement wouldn't stop pushing. And he did the right thing. He's a better president. He's a better candidate. So I think we have to keep raising the issues that will make him a better candidate. You have all these young people who just graduated this spring off a cliff into the worst economy since the Great Depression with all these student loans. We need to push him he's already come out to make sure we don't double the student loans. We need to push him to do more for these students. If we want the students to fight hard for him, then we need to stand with him fighting harder for the students. Same with the underwater mortgages. You got a third of American households that are underwater in terms of, by the time you finish paying off your mortgage, you paid more than the house is worth. You're being overcharged by the banks. My view is that we need to push him on that and get him to come out to say the bank should do more and Fannie and Freddie should do more. I know the issues, what's happening to these young people. See, the whole middle class and the so-called American dream is based on go to college, buy a home. That used to be the pathway from poverty, like my father, to the middle class. Now it's become a trap door from the middle class into poverty. That's the issue. Now, how the artists get around him to push that issue, I don't know. But I think if he does push those issues, he'll be stronger in the swing states and he can win.
Thank you.
My question, first I just want to say that I'm a Laneite. You know about Jackson, Tennessee.
Lane College, Jackson, Tennessee. Well, first of all, y'all don't know this. My grandfather, on my mother's side, was the president of Lane College. At the time, he was the youngest president of any college in the United States. He was in his early 30s. Lane College is a small black college in my hometown of Jackson, Tennessee. My mother went there. My father went there. My twin sister went there. All my uncles and aunts went there, and you went there. Yes. So give a round of applause to Lane College. Lane College.
I have had a Kleenex with me all evening because of Lane College and you, yes, and your grandfather, Dr. Bishop Kirkendall.
Yes.
When I was there, your grandfather was our president. And so...
Lord, stand up. What's your name?
I am Virginia Pruitt Marshall.
You a Pruitt?
Yes.
Oh!
My sister Lizzie Pruitt was your babysitter when we were on campus. I'm looking for my sister here someplace. So my sister Liz over there was your babysitter.
I was talking to somebody earlier, and I said, who was I talking to? What's her name? What's her name? Yeah, Ben Jerry. I said the first thing Southern to say, who your peoples is? Who your peoples is? You a Pruitt?
Yes.
Oh, I'm a Kirkendall on my mom's side. Go ahead.
So you come from good stock.
Thank you, sister.
And we are so proud of you from the CME Church of Lane College and just around the connection.
Thank you, sister.
And I was wondering, from your background in rural Jackson, Tennessee,
yes,
and your experiences from an educated household, highly thought of in that part of the world, and around the world for us really as CMEs, and your time in the White House, what is your vision for yourself 10 years from now?
Oh, Lord. I thought she was going to ask me an easy question. Like, how is K-Pel and Tommy, you know? They're doing good. You know, I don't know. Everybody wants me to run for office. And whenever they say that, I say, I must have offended you somehow. The worst jobs in the world and the worst process to get them. So I don't know. I think I'm a good outsider. I understand the inside now. So now I know how to really get them. You know, people say that the White House doesn't work. We got the White House and it didn't work. No, your grammar ain't right on that. We got the White House and it didn't work. No. We got the White House and we didn't know how to work the White House. See, that's different. We didn't know how to work the White House. We didn't know the combination of carrots and sticks to get them to do stuff. You're starting to see it now with the DREAM Act and all that. You're starting to see what it takes, the pressure, but also you don't burn all the bridges. And there's a way to do this, and we're still learning. But I want to be on the outside. I think I'm good on the outside. I like going on these TV shows and giving them hell. I love that. And smiling and making it look easy. That makes me happy. Because you haven't seen a lot of African-American male progressives on TV. Going up against Ann Coulter and George Will and those kind of people. So I like that. And after, I'm scared before I do it. And then when I'm doing it, I'm real scared. But then afterwards, I feel good. So there's something about that I would like to focus on somehow, be able to be a better advocate. I just wrote a book. I like writing books. No, I like being finished writing books.
I can understand that.
And, but I don't know, pray for me, sister. I don't know what to do. And I didn't expect to be in the White House. It was not on my to-do list. You know, most people who were in that building, their whole life, they had been planning to go. I mean, from third grade, everything had been about how I'm going to be in the White House. And when they got there, they were just, I say they were a part of the B team, just happy to be there, you see. And they didn't necessarily have an agenda or something they were trying to get done. I never thought about the White House. In fact, literally, Yes Magazine had interviewed me 3 days before they called and asked me to come and asked would I accept to go. And I burst out laughing and said, first of all, they ain't gonna ask me. And second of all, no, I wouldn't go. I just got a new house. I'm not going to try to go to DC. So I didn't, so I never expected to go. And most people, when they go, they ask, can I go? They ask me to come. And then most people, when they leave, they say, get your butt out of here. But I told them I was leaving. So I had the opposite experience. I didn't ask to go, they asked me, and then they didn't ask me to leave. I said, listen, let's be honest here. I didn't sign that truth or petition, and I'm not the stuff they say I am, but let's be clear. I was distinguishable as a radical activist in the Bay Area. You got to work hard. You got to work weekends. You got to get up early to be walking down the street in Oakland. And that dude is a radical. So, guilty as charged not to any specific charge, but generally, yes, I was on the left side of Pluto for my 20s. And I don't want you to have to sit up here and explain all that to anybody. We're trying to get doctors to babies. That's more important. I got 6 months in the White House. I'll tell you right now, if they gave you a contract, anybody in here and said, you can come to the White House, you can work for 6 months, but at the end, you're going to have a terrible 2 weeks and have to be out of here, sign the contract and run down there, because you will have an experience that will change you forever. You think you love your community now, and you think you love the country now. Hold it in your arms for 6 months. Hold it in your arms for 6 months. And see how fragile this whole thing is. So that will always be a part of who I am. I'm sure when I die, my obit is going to say I work for Obama. But I'm not a politician. So maybe pray for me. Help me think about what I should do.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, one of the things that concerns me, you mentioned, and that's voter registration and what's happening in that regard. And we've lost some of our people, like Acorn, whatever, who helped with that. What do we do about it? I'm looking at the college students and I'm saying, well, one thing we can do is encourage them to register to vote while they're at home this summer, and make sure that they have their absentee ballots. Or make sure their parents send them to them already filled out, or maybe their parents should fill them out. I don't know.
No comment.
We're not going to tell them. But what I'm saying is, I see that as a very serious problem for this election, and I'm not really sure. Got any suggestions about that?
I work for an organization called Rebuild the Dream. And you can join us at rebuildthedream.com. One of the things that we're pushing is this campaign for young people that we're calling Hoodie Vote. Hoodie Vote. Remember Trayvon? I was talking to Reverend Jackson, and he was saying, you know, you tell these young people, the next Trayvon that happens, wouldn't you like to be able to be on the jury when that Zimmerman walks in? Or when the mother walks in, wouldn't you love for a Zimmerman or the mother of a Trayvon to have to look up in the jury and see some faces that look like yours in that jury? And people say, yeah, sure would. I say, great. Well, the only way you get to be on the jury is you register to vote. You have to register to vote to be on the jury. And so we're trying to encourage young people to actually go register in their hoodies. Make it a mass action. Make it cool. Make it interesting. Now it's not about one person. It's about one generation. And so we're hoping that that will catch on. We don't know what will catch on, but we do think that when you have this level of assault on voting rights, and they're so slick with it. Oh, well, you have to have an ID to, you know, whatever, cash a check. Well, why shouldn't you have to have an ID to vote? And it just sounds so good. But you got elderly people who haven't had a driver's license for 20 years, who can't find their birth certificate, but they registered to vote. They can get down there to vote, and they're going to be turned away. And then they had Souls to the Polls down in Florida, where they would take folks from church and let them go vote early. They outlawed that in Florida. That's not anything but trying to stop the black community from being able to vote. And so when you have that kind of coordinated assault on voting rights, that's an attack on democracy itself.
And Florida, of course, is the nexus of one of the questions over how much polling of the voter rolls there'll be.
Purging.
But I'll just, you know, sorry, purging of the voter rolls, but I'll just add in a quick story that blew my mind that kind of exemplifies how ID is a flexible concept. So on the same trip where I went to visit with the Tea Party in Arizona, I went to the Tejano Ohotom Reservation, which sort of straddles the U.S. and Mexico in Arizona. And because the tribe had a very flexible border before the border was enforced to the level it is now, there were people who fought in World War II who now can't even get Social Security benefits because they can't prove that they were born on the U.S. side of the border. Oh. And it just, I was like, wow, that blows my mind. So so the question of ID is not as simple as people make it. Yeah,
and the thing is that you're solving, your solution, we got to get all these IDs for people to vote. What problem are you solving? There hasn't been some huge rash of people voting unjustly in any state. So it's clear they're not responding to a problem of people abusing the right to vote. So the reason I think your question is good, and I'll keep the answer short, is just that there is a possibility to have a big pro-democracy movement. You have a lot of affluent elite folks who say, we got to get big money out of politics. We got to get big money out of politics. And they're very obsessed with the Citizens United vote and this decision. And they look only at one side of it. It's the big money coming in. But they don't look at the little people being pushed out. And so whatever movement they come up with is going to be very shallow. It's going to be very thin. And it won't have the power that it would have if we, and at the same time, folks in the NAACP and League of Young Voters are talking about the little people being pushed out. But they don't bang as hard on the big corporate money coming in. We've got to come together. We have to have a money out, voters in strategy that can bring out the best of all sides of the American polity, and that has to be built. In the meantime, we just have to use our technology and use our social media to overcome these barriers. But this will be a permanent fight, because there are people, there are forces who recognize that as we become a quote-unquote more diverse country, for the first time last year now, the majority of babies born were non-white. People say, someday America will be a non-white country. If you look in the bassinets right now, you're already a non-white nation. You go to kindergarten, it's already a non-white nation. And they see that. And because their agenda is so retrograde and awful, the only way they can hold on to power is to do these kind of negative things. We have to find some way to fight back.
All right, I think we're going to just take 2 more questions, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So,
Van, we just want to welcome you back to the Bay Area.
Oh, Kevin Danaher. Give him a round of applause. That's Kevin. Big fighter for global justice.
So now that you embarrass me, I'm interested in connecting here the need for transparency in government and the arts in this, and I'm wondering what you think about the idea of a campaign to require members of Congress who are public servants like police, firefighters, EMTs, they all wear uniforms. Congress should wear uniforms, and they should look like NASCAR jumpsuits with decals of the donors in relative size.
I'm sorry, that's so funny.
If you imagine when the member of Congress comes back for a town hall meeting and there's about 6 or 7 cardboard life-size cutouts of them dressed up in that suit, the media would love that.
Someone has to at least do that as a painting or art project. That would be brilliant.
If you guys don't know who that is, that is Kevin Danaher. Kevin Danaher, just to brag on him, one of the founders of Global Exchange, been fighting for global justice for almost 20 years. The main founder of something called the Green Festivals. If you have not been to the Green Festivals, you are missing out on all these new products and services that are coming down the pipe that are, eco-friendly but also cool. And was one of my big mentors in the early 1990s before we went to some place called Seattle. And he got me tear gassed along with about everybody I know. But I forgive him. Glad you're here, Kevin.
Do we have another?
Hi.
Hey, Henri.
How you doing? Okay.
This is old home week. Henri, my good friend. Only my friends came, but I'm glad you came. Y'all didn't want me to be embarrassed talking to an empty hall. I appreciate you. Go ahead, Henri.
Okay, this is serious. I voted at Bayview Hunters Point at the primary. The ballot that I got appeared not to have Barack Obama's name on it. I didn't realize that, and I was sitting there for 45 minutes because I had to use my iPhone literally to look up some of these candidates to see who I needed to vote for, right? I go, and assuming that I missed it, I went to the voters people and said, hey, I thought Barack's name was supposed to be on this ballot. And she said, oh, no, that's in the fall.
Right.
Okay, so now that's in the black community in San Francisco. So maybe I missed it. I doubt it, but maybe I missed it. But then I got misdirected by the poll worker who said, oh, it's not supposed to be there. And that doesn't matter in the primary because, it's California. He's going to win. He was unopposed. But if they managed to either through ignorance, miseducation, intention, whatever, and if they can do that in San Francisco, what's going to happen in Florida and Georgia, where I was born? So I don't know how to address it, but I was stunned when it happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to be worried about the swing states. You're right. In the primary, because he's unopposed, you were electing delegates for the convention, and so they maybe not. But you weren't the victim of any skullduggery or anything like that. That's actually the right way to do it because he's unopposed. If he had been opposed, then that would have been different. He's unopposed, so you were just electing who is going to go represent your community at the convention. That's all you were voting on.
His name was on the ballot for many people in Oakland and other places in San Francisco. And the point is, maybe I missed it, but the poll worker
herself,
when I brought it to their attention, didn't address it.
I got you. Well, about that, I obviously don't know enough. Here's what I know about the swing states. Here in California, you can vote for Elmer Fudd, and Obama's going to win, okay?
So you're encouraging people to vote for Elmer Fudd?
I'm saying it doesn't matter who you vote for in California. That's the honest truth. I worked in the White House. I learned some things. Your value, if you want to have some value, vote absentee and get your butt to a swing state and write some checks and quit sitting on your wallets. Because what's happening right now is that we are about to do in 4 or 5 swing states what we just did in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we put our minimum against our opponent's maximum. That's what we had in Wisconsin. After Wisconsin, everybody you know, ooh, Lord, it's bad. Blogging about it, talking about it, crying about it. Way more work after Wisconsin, complaining about the loss, than on the front end trying to secure the victory. Now, if you thought you felt bad Wednesday morning after Wisconsin, think about how you were going to feel in November if the same thing happens in 4 or 5 swing states. So what I will say to you is this. We need 2 things in the swing states. We need to, you said you got on your smartphone, we need to support these groups that are using this voter protection, election protection stuff, trying to get people out there with all the tablets and that kind of stuff. I don't know, Google it, find those groups, help those groups. That's important. But here's what I know. We sat here in Wisconsin. We let those local groups get gunned down. Black folks voted almost in record numbers in Milwaukee. They came out. You know they came out. The labor unions fought hard on the ground in Wisconsin. It was a winning coalition on the ground. But the air cover never came. National Democrats stayed out. There were some exceptions. But mostly, National Democrats stayed out. National civil rights groups stayed out. National women's groups stayed out. National environmental groups. There were some exceptions. But on the whole, how many people do you know who went down to Milwaukee and helped? Very few. How many people in this room wrote a check? If that is the attitude that we take, so that was our minimum effort against their maximum. They had 13 billionaires jump in Wisconsin. 13 billionaires, only 1 even lived in Wisconsin. So in that one state, they weren't fighting a local governor. They were fighting the entire conservative apparatus. When we put our minimum against their maximum, we lose. Now, we're going to sit here, conceivably, and say, well, you know, I worked hard for Obama. I went to Ohio for Obama. I went to Nevada for Obama. I maxed out for Obama last time. But I ain't going to do it this time. I ain't got it. Not you, but your neighbor sitting next to you. I ain't got it for no Barack Obama this time. All right. All right. Now listen. If you listen really closely, you hear a voice in your ear, and it sounds like screaming a shriek. You know who it is? Screaming in your ear right now? You a year from now. Screaming back through time. Saying we got a trifecta Tea Party government. You got the Tea Party running the White House, the Tea Party running the Senate, the Tea Party running the House, and the Tea Party picking 2 Supreme Court nominees. That's going to be you screaming a year from now. Anything that you think that you a year from now, looking at a trifecta Tea Party government, whatever prayer you think you would be saying then to you now, answer that prayer. That's all. If we put our maximum against their maximum, we're going to be fine. But if we put our minimum against their maximum, we're going to lose. And my problem with it is this. I'm not comparing Obama to the almighty. I'm comparing Obama to the alternative.
All right, I got one last question for you, from me. I have a genuine love for some of the members of the Tea Party, people who I've met face to face.
Yes, yes.
People who were scared.
That's right.
People like a woman who I brought to Harvard to speak to my class who is one of the steering committee members of the Colorado River Tea Party. in Yuma, Arizona, which has a 26% unemployment rate. I can understand why people are scared. And there's a viral video that goes around, that's been going around, that has, it basically mashes up old Donald Duck cartoons with the voice of O'Reilly, and talks about the inspiration of fear, and how we can't always blame fearful people for being fearful, and we have to look at the ways in which they're inspired to be and act fearful. One of the things that concerns me deeply is that the very nature of politics demands winners and losers. And you, in your book, talk a lot about the 100%, not the 99%, not the 1%, but how can we build a country for the 100%? I think a lot about the urban and the rural, the people who are used to living in multicultural environments, those who aren't, the people who are fearful, who seem to outnumber the people who are hopeful. Can there be a 100%? Is there a 100% solution? Or can you just motivate people who already have a predilection to move in one direction?
Well, you know, this is one that's not a pat answer. And this is kind of the heartbreak, I think, of the hope and changers in the campaign who went to D.C. I think that you had a lot of people who tried to elect Obama, some for their own reasons, some because they wanted a position, but some of us, like people in this room, we just wanted to see something beautiful. And I think that we were right. I want to believe that we were right, that the country is more beautiful than what we're seeing today. But part of the heartbreak and part of the seasoning and the toughening and the things that I've gone through, you come to certain conclusions. You have to have in your heart a commitment to the whole, to being for the 100%, and hold in your heart folks who are scared, including folks in the Tea Party. And I, like you, I have friends in the Tea Party, people who used to yell at me and that kind of stuff, and we get in Twitter wars with, and then we start direct messaging and then talk on the phone. And when my mom got sick recently, I had more Tea Party friends call me than my progressive friends, so I get it. But here's where we actually are. We're at a decision point in the country. We're either going to turn to each other, on each other. We're either going to move more in this direction of the Paul Ryan budget and, you know, no increase in taxes for rich people, all the pain for everybody else, or we're going to do something different. And at that inflection point, there will be a winner, there will be a loser. And here's how I reconcile it. I have a son. His name is Cabral. He is an extraordinary soccer player. Now, I know you think your child is an extraordinary soccer player. No, my child is an extraordinary soccer player. He's going in 3rd grade, and he's unbelievable. And if my child plays your child, I want my child to win. I want my child to beat your child. I will be cheering for my child. I will not be cheering for your child. I just want you to be clear about that. There's a contest. There's going to be a winner and a loser. I believe in my child. I want my child to win. But I don't want my child to bite your child. I don't want my child to kick your child. I don't want my child to cheat to win. I want my child to win fair and square. That's all, fair and square. We don't have to agree. It's a democracy. It's all right that some have this view and some have that view. That's all right. I should be proud of my views. I shouldn't always be trying to figure out how can I be bipartisan and say bye-bye to my principles and values. That's all bipartisan means now in D.C., because the only people supposed to be bipartisan is the Democrats. So when you buy parties, you say bye to your principles and jump on their program. I should be able to be proud of my ideas and fight for them and defend them and point out where my sisters and brothers in the Tea Party I think are dead wrong on the facts or on the science or whatever, but not lie on them, not try and destroy them. And so I think the common ground has to be on how we're going to have these differences. And I think sometimes we get, as liberals, so uncomfortable with the differences that we want to pretend the differences are not real. That's not healthy. We should have a healthy debate and a healthy competition. And I think that we can do that. Last thing I want to say about my sisters and brothers in the Tea Party, we do sometimes insult them. I do sometimes accidentally, and then they yell at me, and I try to fix it. But we do sometimes insult them when we say things like they vote against their own economic interests. I do want to challenge that one, because I've gotten to know them. And the way that it comes across to them is that we're calling them stupid. And what they're, and nobody's going to follow anybody or join forces with anybody who's insulting them and disrespecting them and calling them stupid. And when liberals call all the heartland of America dumb fuckistan, which I've heard, that's wrong. You know who votes against your economic self-interest? You. You do. Oh, liberals, any tax, I'll vote for it. It's a tax, I'm for it. Right? And they say, well, isn't that stupid? You say, no, it's a higher principle involved. I'm willing to pay some more taxes, take a personal hit, so there can be these programs or the roads or the bridges or the water or whatever the thing is. Well, hold on a second. They're the same way. Respect that. What they're saying is, you say, well, they're voting to cut programs that would help them. They say, because I talk to them too, you're trying to bribe me with free stuff that I didn't earn. You're trying to bribe me with free stuff I did. There's a higher principle. Yes, I might take a hit with this program. But there's a higher principle. I don't want to raise my children in a world where they behave recklessly or foolishly. Somebody's going to bail them out and reward them and undermine my parenting. There's a higher principle. Well, wait a minute. Now we both have higher principles. Wait a minute. You mean you're voting this way not because you're stupid, but because there's something higher to you and you're concerned about a moral dimension of politics? Well, so do we. Maybe that's a way that we can begin to show some respect. I say this because I want to beat these guys. I'm not going to apologize for it. I want to beat them. I want to beat them on the issues. I want to beat them fair and square. But when it's over, we still have to be one country. So the way we beat them has to leave us in a position that we can still, just like my son does, at the end of the game, walk over and shake hands and go on and be one country. So thank you.
Thank you, Van. Thank all of you. Charles, thank you very much.
And
yep, it's on.
I want to remind you all that Van's most recent book is for sale just outside of these doors, and he's going to be at the table in the back signing. So,
and I would appreciate it if you would consider joining the organization, rebuildthedream.com. We're fighting to get student loan debt reduced for these young people. We're fighting to get home mortgages reduced, and we're standing up for what we believe is the best in the American dream, or whatever is left of it. Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, Van.